Hey guys, welcome back to your Lake Fork Guide. It is the last couple days of December. It's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's about 33 degrees. And today was filming day. And how did I go about catching some decent sized fish today? Well, there's one way to catch big fish when it gets this miserable in the winter, and that's a good old flipping jig. Today, we're going to talk about how to catch big Lake Fork bass in cold water on a flipping jig. You know, guys, a flipping jig is easily one of my favorite things to put in my hand, especially when we get into December, January, and even into February. Flipping jigs probably caught more double-digit bass on this lake over the history of this lake than anything else combined. I mean, there's just tons and tons of people that have caught giant bass on flipping jigs. So it's a great way to do it, and we'll get kind of into the areas and the areas you need to focus on to catch these big fish later. Right now, I want to show you kind of the gear that we're using. You know, I've really fallen in love with my 6th Sense hybrid jigs. I was dragging the big 3/4 ounce version offshore back in the summertime, and even some in the fall. But since we've got into the wintertime now, and we got into the creek channel jig bite, I'm throwing the 1/2 ounce and the 3/8 ounce versions in the timber on those creek channels and the root systems, and it's coming through there really good. What's better than that, what's more important than that to me, is that it's hooking the fish really well. I mean, you'll see the fish that were caught today were hooked in the top of the mouth. I mean, I think every single fish we caught today was hooked in the top of the mouth. So this jig's doing a great job for us. You know, on color, my favorite color and the one that I'll throw, I mean, honestly, from now through February, I'll probably throw this color almost all the time, about 90% of the time. It's going to be some type of black and blue. This one right here, I believe Casey's calling this black light. And what it is, it's a black with blue flake and with some purple highlights. So black, blue, and purple is basically what it is. You can see today we had really dark skies all day. We had some rain this past week. The water's got a little color to it right now, so we're going with the electric blue trailer. I apologize if I'm shivering in my voice. It's really cold today. But electric blue trailer is the color that worked for me best today. Black and blue is also a very good trailer. Speaking of trailers, let's talk about the types of trailers I use, because that's a big deal. Little subtle changes when you get this extreme weather. Little subtle changes in the type of trailer and the type of action your trailer has can make the difference between 5 to 10 bites and 0 bites. So it's a big deal. You know, the Rage Crawl throughout the year is probably my favorite jig trailer. So, you know, if you think of that Rage Crawl, what it does, it actually kicks. It kicks real fast, a real hard, fast kick when you're swimming it. You know, as you progress on, you get some different type of trailers, like the Smash Crawl. And this is kind of my in-between trailer. This is my in-the-middle trailer. And then you get these chunk style trailers like this chunk right here, and like the beaver style trailers like the LFT Flipper. Now, you know, as the water gets colder, I want that bait to have more of a slow, waving, pumping type of action, and not as much of a kick or a swim. So the Rage Crawl would be my hardest swimming bait, my hardest swimming trailer. The Smash Crawl is my next step down. So like right now, it's just about time. It's right, you know, the water's right around 50 degrees right now. It's going to keep getting colder. Right as we break over that 50-degree mark, I'm going to go to this Smash Crawl because it's going to have a little more subtle, a little more wave. It'll swim a little bit, but it's going to be more of a slow, methodical action. So that's when I'm going to go to Smash Crawl. And I can stay with that for the most part. But when that water gets all the way down in the lower end of the 40s, which is typically about as cold as we get every few years, we might see the upper 30s. But when we get to that lower half of the 40s, really around that 40-degree mark, you have to go to those straight-legged trailers that just have a very soft, subtle pumping type of action, just a real slow, subtle flow, not a kick of any kind. And that's where these chunk style trailers, and really I love the LFT because it's such a short, compact deal, and I'll actually trim it down to cut about half of the body of the bait off and make a real compact profile, and I'll show you how in just a minute. And with that bait being so short, it just has those legs will spread out and create this subtle little pump that just really seems to key in some bites under the most extreme cold water conditions. So here's one that's rigged up with one of those chunks. As you can see, that chunk, you know, if you were to just put it on the hook right here, that would create a very big profile, long profile bait. You know, guys, I don't want big profile baits. Number one, we're getting them in and out of very tight areas in these root systems and around this timber, so I like a compact bait for that. Number two is, you know, these fish are cold. They're not the most aggressive biters right now, and so I don't want to give them any excuse to grab a hold of something down here and not get the hook. So I want that trailer and everything to be as compact as it can so that less fish will miss the hook when they bite. So as you can see with that chunk, I got one rigged up on this one. What I do is I go ahead and take that chunk and I run the hook through right here, and I come out right here and I run that chunk all the way up on the hook keeper, way up on the hook like that right there. So there's the chunk. I'll go ahead and show you how to rig up the LFT flipper, which, like I said, it's a very underutilized but very good wintertime trailer. You're going to take about half of this body from here to here, cut that right in half. Just pinch it off just like that. Make sure you got it centered. And you just kind of thread that joker, and the hook point's going to come out right behind the eyes, and you want to go right in between them, right in the middle. There we go. We got that one good and centered. We'll run that up there on the keeper, and you'll see what a nice, tight, compact profile that creates. That creates just, and this skirt needs a little bit of trimming. It's gotten pulled down from getting bites here lately. But man, that is just a very compact, very short and subtle action trailer that is deadly in the super cold water when we get to the coldest part of the year. Now, a couple things I like to do with the jig to help it get compact. If you'll notice on all my jigs, like I said, that one, some of the strands have been pulled on from getting bites. But and this one has a couple of strands that have been pulled down, not many. But if you notice, the general flow of the skirt is about a ½ inch below the bend of the hook. I like to trim all my jig skirts, in the wintertime especially, when I want that compact profile, about a ½ inch, sometimes even closer to the bottom bend of the hook. My weed guard, I like to trim as well. Trimming your weed guard does two things. Number one, I feel like it maybe increases your hookup ratio a little bit. But what it does is it actually makes your bait more weedless. It makes it come through cover better. Because what it does is the shorter that weed guard is, the stiffer it gets, right? So the more it'll hold up. When that thing flips and rolls over a limb, the better it'll hold up. See, I can run my hand right over that jig and I never touch hook. If you ever run your finger over your weed guard and you feel that hook point, hey, you got a problem. You need to change that jig out. So when you trim it down, where I like to trim it is I like to get it dead even with the barb, as you can see right there, and trim it up. So I want that weed guard even with my barb. Then I'm going to take, and actually you can do this a few times, but you do it too many times, your weed guard's going to get weak. But if your weed guard is sitting a little too close to your hook, one thing you can do is just take it, bend it up, and fan it out a little bit, right? And then just let it unfold. You can even take it and pull it over here to the side and let it unfold. So you spread that thing out, bend it up, get it a little bit further away from that hook, get it spread out a little bit, and that actually makes it even more weedless. So once you do that so many times, bending that weed guard back and forth, that weed guard will get real soft and pliable, and your bait will start hanging up too much. You got to change it out. All right, let's talk about this, because this with jig fishing is super important. When you're jig fishing in the winter, I have a 7.4 heavy action rod. To me, this is perfect for a flipping jig. You want a rod that has a ton of power, that can drive a big 5-6 hook through a big fish's mouth, but you want a little bit of tip. You have to have a very, very sensitive rod. This is probably the #1 technique where sensitivity is the most important to me of any. In the wintertime, a lot of these big fish will bite. It'll be a very subtle bite. You know, a lot of times you can get a good jig bite going where they're aggressive and they'll rattle your rod. But there are plenty of days during the wintertime where it is a very soft, subtle bite, so a very sensitive rod is very important. Limit Elite Series 7.4 heavy action rod. It's a little bit of a pricey rod. It's a $200 rod. I mean, it's a good deal for the rod you're getting. I mean, it's a super high-end rod, super lightweight. But this is, to me, hands down the best jig rod I've ever had in my hands. I mean, this thing is absolutely phenomenal. I'll put it up against a lot of $300 and $400 and $500 rods on the market and think this thing will hold up next to them just fine, and in some cases be even better. So that's my rod. Next is the reel. It's important to have a high-speed reel. This is a 7.3 to 1 gear ratio reel. I don't care what brand you choose. That's up to you. You want a good reel, a reel that you can cast smoothly, a reel that's going to hold up and have good durable gears, because these hook sets are violent. You're fishing in heavy cover. You're making a lot of casts throughout the day, a lot of pitches throughout the day. So you need a quality reel, but most importantly is having a high gear ratio, because number one, when those fish are biting aggressively on the jig bite and they knock slack in your line, it is important to get caught up and set the hook quickly. They do not hold these jigs very long in the wintertime. They will bite them and spit them pretty quick. So when you feel that tick, you got to get that slack out of your line and get him hooked as fast as possible. The second thing is you want to get that fish up and out of those root systems as fast as possible. I mean, I broke one off today. Set the hook on him, and he was just down there in them roots, and he broke me off. You got to be able to get that fish up and out of cover. So for that reason, 7.3 to 1 gear ratio reel, ultra important in jig fishing. All right, next thing is the line. A lot of people will say, if you're going to fish that heavy a cover, why not use braid? Well, in the wintertime, fish in general are a little more picky. They're a little more sensitive. A lot of times you're fishing post-frontal conditions, high pressure, fish that are in a bad mood. I don't really worry so much about them seeing the braid, but they hear the braid. The noise that braid makes going through your guides, we've all heard it when you're reeling your braid in, the noise that it makes going through your rod guides. It makes those same type of noises when it hits branches and trees and root systems, and anything that braid comes into contact with, as that line is dragging over it, it's going to make that noise. For that reason, I only use fluorocarbon line on this technique in the wintertime. Now I use 20-pound fluorocarbon. Berkeley makes a good 100% fluorocarbon. Seaguar Red Label is fine. I used it plenty. The Invisex stuff is good. There's a lot of good fluorocarbons out there. But 20-pound fluorocarbon is of utmost importance for me wintertime jig fishing. All right, so there's all the gear. Now, let's talk about areas. There's really only one thing that I'm keyed in on. You can catch some jig fish on points and offshore structure and grass flats. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can catch jig fish in the wintertime, but there's really only one thing that I concentrate on, and that is the outside bends of creek channel swings. If you look at a creek channel on a map and it's making a curve like this, it comes out and makes a curve. Well, before that was a lake, when that was just a creek with water flowing through it, when that water came down that creek and made that turn, that outside part of that bend, okay, where that water pushed up against, as it made that turn, that water pushed up against that outside bend, right? You got two bends here. You got an outside, this is the inside, and this is the outside. That water pushed up against this, and all those trees that were growing on the edge of that creek, that water washed out those root systems and exposed them. What that does is creates, basically, number one, it creates a sharp ledge, right? So the ground, it's going to fall off a lot more sharply on the outside bend than it is on the inside bend. And number two, like I said, those root systems got exposed on those trees that were located on that outside bend. That's just a bunch of mini brush piles right there sitting on top of the ledge. Now, if you were offshore structure fishing and you found, 8 to 10 brush piles in a row that were right on the crest of a ledge, boy, you'd think you done found the jackpot. Well, God gave you that jackpot on every, not every, but all the creek channel bends that have a lot of trees on them, He gave you that type of a jackpot with a ledge and brush piles sitting right on the crest of that ledge, hanging out over them sometimes. That's the dominant piece of cover. That's the dominant, ledge in the area, the dominant structure, and it's got the dominant cover mixed in, so it's going to draw a big fish. What I've done here, I've positioned myself on the inside of the bend. There's a big bend in this creek, makes a big old U-turn right out there, right out in front of me, and I can get about 15 to 20 feet past the outside bend with a long cast. That's what I want to do. I want to get about 15 feet past the ledge of the bend. Couple reasons we do that. One is these fish are so lethargic, I don't want that jig crashing in from straight above their head 20 foot down, falling right on top of them. I kind of want to get that jig past them and sneak up on them a little bit. I want to creep and crawl that thing right up to those root systems of those trees, and then as it pops over those roots, it'll just subtly hop over and fall right down in their face, and that's where I get the reaction bite. All right, so right now I'm gonna go ahead and make a long cast all the way across the creek. I'm over outside the bend on the other side up on the flat. This particular creek right here is about 22 to 23 feet in the bottom. On top it's about 16, so it's got a good sharp ledge on it. Big drop, about 6-7 foot drop. That's kind of what we're looking for. But all I'm going to do after I make that long cast, I'm going to let that jig fall all the way to the bottom, take my time, and I'm just going to start creeping it up. And you know, right here, there's a bunch of trees out here in front of us that we can't see. Those trees have broken off and fallen into the lake over the years. It's actually a lot easier to do this when you can see the tops of the trees when the lake's a little bit lower, because then it's real easy to put your jig right beside each and every tree. Right now you just kind of have to fan cast that channel, and sometimes you're going to go up over the top of those trees and get real high. That's not good. I never usually catch fish when I get up high, but you just got to take your chances and make casts, and every once in a while you'll get them right down in that root system, and when you feel it, you'll know. I'm hitting a little bit of some outside roots right now, not the real good ones. I feel them catch just a little bit. If you watch, caught one a little bit right there, and it just hopped over, but I'm just on the outside edge. I'm not in the real exposed roots, the real hard roots. You'll feel the hardness and the firmness of those roots when you get in them where it's really washed out, and that's what you're looking for. When you start feeling that jig bounce off firm roots, and you'll feel tension on it, and then you'll pop over and you'll hit the bottom, and then you'll pull up and you'll feel how hard that root is. Hey, get ready. That's when you're going. I just hit my first hard root right there. So let's see. So now I'm kind of hanging in midair from one to another. There we go. I'm in a root. Just got in one little piece of hardwood now. I didn't really get in the best spot there, and that's going to happen sometimes. You're not always going to hit the A position on every cast when you can't see the tops of the trees. All right, so we'll make another cast, and we'll just try to change our line just a little bit. Because like I said, there's trees all over this outside bend, so we're going to try and change our angle just a little bit, see if we can hit a good one. You know, one thing that's of paramount importance when you're doing this, you're fishing so slow, you can't afford for your boat to be drifting around a lot. So if you'll notice, I'm kind of facing into the wind right here. If you look the way the water's moving. Not a lot of wind today, so it's not that hard. But the harder the wind blows, the more important it is. You absolutely must face into the wind when you're doing this cold water, slow moving jig fishing. I mean, you really want to get down in there. When you get in a good root system and you feel it, you want to pick apart every single root. You really got to feel around and just, use your rod, use your, good 20-pound fluorocarbon line. You got that good half-ounce jig. You want to feel every piece of that root system that you can. And you want to leave it down in there as long as you possibly can, honestly. All right, now you can kind of see my rod tip starting to bow up. It's hung on one of those roots. Boom, it pops over. I'm going to point it back down and let it fall on slack line. I hope that picked up on the camera, because that was a really good example of being down in there and being kind of stuck on one and it hopping over. And here I come again, let it fall. So we might be fixing to get bit here because we're down in the roots. Now the thing is, I say we might be fixing to get bit. You got to do this a bunch of times. You got to do this a bunch of times per bite. I mean, it's a cold bite. Literally the high today is like 35 degrees, and we still caught several fish on the jig and caught some really good fish on the jig. So it pays off, but it's a methodical deal. You got to go super slow. You got to understand you're fishing for a handful of bites, but these are going to be the very best bites you can get in this cold, super cold weather. It's going to be hard to catch a fish a lot, most other ways. There's not a whole lot of ways to do it when the weather gets this extreme this time of year. But if you're addicted to it and you love it like I do, and you like a chance to catch a really big fish, then this is a great way to do it. You can catch some really giant bass doing this, and you just have to go real methodical and real slow, and Pick apart enough root systems on the outside bends, and you'll catch some really big bass. Got it. There we go. Now we got something going here. We're just getting that jig right down in those root systems and just picking them apart. Going just as slow as we can go in those roots, and that's another solid bass right there. This is 4 out of the same hole. 4. This is literally 2 cast in a row for him, 2 cast in a row for me. That's a good one. Boom! That's it. Oh! He's pretty good, ain't he?
Little jig fishing.
First fish of the day. I'll be honest with you, it happened even faster than I had hoped for. So,
Joker was eating that jig.
good old pre-spawn female getting ready to spawn right there. Beautiful thing. Well, there you go, guys. There's a full breakdown on how to catch some really big bass in the wintertime on jigs. And there's a couple fish catches from the day, and even a couple that were from last year as well. So as you can see, we catch a really good sized bass in these creek channels, flipping these jigs and casting these jigs around these outside bends. It's a great way to get out and salvage a day, you know, when there's really no other way to catch them. I don't think we could have caught a limit of fish any other way today than flipping a jig in a creek channel. So hey, hopefully this video helps you. Hopefully we teach you some things. Get out there, do the things we talked about, find the areas we talked about, the outside bends, and get that jig down in there and take your time and learn it, because it's a technique that can absolutely pay off with the fish of a lifetime. Well, we sure appreciate you watching today. Hey, if you like this video, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up. If you want to see more, subscribe. Please leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think about the insanity that is me fishing on a day where it barely got above freezing in Texas. And let us know anything else you might want to see on the channel, technique you want covered, anything like that. You guys know how we do it. We appreciate you watching as always, and we'll see you guys next time right here on your Lake Fork Channel.